My name is Erica Wiley, and I am a graduate student member of the Society of Counseling Psychology Division 17 of the American Psychological Association. Today, I am thrilled to be interviewing Dr. Melba Vasquez, who is a counseling psychologist in independent practice in Austin, Texas. Dr. Vasquez earned her PhD from the University of Texas and has served in leadership positions within APA for over 30 years. Dr. Vasquez has been president of Division 17 as well as the entire American Psychological Association. Today, she has graciously agreed to speak to graduate students and early career professionals about her life as a practitioner. Thank you again, Dr. Vasquez, for speaking with us today.
You're very welcome.
So I'll just jump right into it. My first question is, what led you to become a counseling psychologist?
Well, my first career was as a school teacher, and I soon decided that I wanted to get a master's in counseling and become a school counselor. And while I was working on a master's in counseling, one of my professors, for whom I had also worked as an undergraduate, as a student aid worker, encouraged me to apply to the doctoral program at University of Texas at Austin, and I explored what that was. It had not been a part of my identity to become a psychologist, so I explored it. I became excited about it. I applied and was thrilled to get in. So I sort of went about becoming a psychologist in a roundabout way. It wasn't an initial goal. I'm a first-generation college student, and so the idea of getting more and more education came slowly and through encouragement from others who looked at me and said, she'll be a good fit over here. And so I was very fortunate in that way to have encouragement along the way from mentors. And so counseling psychology was the field that my mentor, my professor, Colleen Connolly, had gotten her doctorate in, and she really valued it and thought that it would be a good fit. And so that's how I came to be a counseling psychologist.
Well, great. And that kind of leads me to my next question, which is, what values do you believe guide your practice?
Oh, my goodness. Well, probably my interest in social justice that is supported by my orientation in multicultural and feminist practice, and principles and values really do shape my belief system. I really believe that if you are an expert in human behavior and you understand humanity, that you really do care about what happens to people. People function best when they have opportunities to have good lives, and so I have a fundamental belief that every person has a right to opportunities and to have the best lives they can have. And so that fuels a lot of what I do, most of what I do, if not all of it.
Can you describe one of your most challenging cases and how you worked with that client?
Well, let me think a minute. Yeah, one case that I have actually written about and talked about recently, actually, at the American Psych Association convention when I was a discussant, had to do with a white male administrator who came into therapy because he was very frustrated and with his personal relationship, his marriage, his wife wanted to separate, and with his job situation. He had changed jobs and sort of been demoted in a way, and he had applied for a promotion and had not gotten it. And he was very, very angry and frustrated and blamed it on affirmative action. And I remember chuckling to myself because I had just, when he came in complaining about affirmative action, I had just published an article in the American Psychologist on affirmative action, which, of course, he had no idea about. Whenever I've talked about the importance of being able to see people who are different from us, one of the things we have to challenge ourselves is to see if we can work with people who are different in many different ways, including perhaps having different values. And in this case, I may have had to refer, except that I was able to resonate to his humanity. He was in a lot of pain and didn't understand why bad things kept happening to him. And we were able to slowly, over a period of time, I was able to, in effect, hold a mirror up to him and help him see how he behaved badly. He behaved in ways that he was able to eventually describe as being a jerk. He realized he was being a jerk in a lot of different contexts. But it took a while. I had to intellectually convince myself that he was hurting because his behavior didn't reflect that. You know, his behavior reflected anger and entitlement. And what I knew intellectually is that men in our society are socialized to express their feelings only through anger, primarily through anger, and they don't even realize the privilege that they're conveying when they, you know, expect to and deserve everything that they want. And so it was really a challenge, a big challenge for me, but I really worked hard to relate to his humanity, and it was there. We were able to connect, and we were able to, I was able to see his pain and touch it, and he was willing to open up to it, and it was a very, very satisfying work. It took about 3 years, but it went well. He still emails me from time to time to let me know how it's going. My own, you know, righteous indignation, regardless of what direction it's coming from, is, I have learned the hard way, is never the best way to proceed or act on. Even though I was indignant with his attitudes, emotionally, I also knew that that was not the way to respond to him, not as a therapist. And, so, you know, the primary responsibility as a therapist is to identify with his humanity and find it and go there.
What do you see as pros and cons of being an independent practitioner as a counseling psychologist?
Well, I was trained in a scientist practitioner program, and the values were very, very strong about being an academic and being a scholar. And so, you know, my first 13 years post-PhD was at university counseling centers, and I was too afraid to apply for or stay in tenure-track positions. I didn't know that I could publish at the rate that was required, and I also didn't think that I could go into private practice because my program didn't really, at the time, didn't really value that as much. So when I first started working in university counseling centers, I was doing teaching. I was, you know, in counseling psychology doctoral programs, both at Colorado State University and then University of Texas. And I also wrote and published and trained and supervised practicing students and interns. So I was doing quite a bit of a variety of things. But I went into private practice. I always had a part-time private practice, and I went into full-time private practice, thinking that I would do that temporarily because I intended to go into counseling center administration, maybe student affairs administration, and I needed to stay in Texas because my father had died about the time that it was time for me to transfer to do something else. So I did full-time practice for a while, and I really, really, really ended up enjoying it a lot. And I found that I could still write and publish, although it takes a great deal of structure and self-discipline to do that because, you know, when you see clients all day long, it's hard to write either at night or early in the morning or weekends. And I also found that I could be my own person and make my own choices and decisions about activities that I got involved with, you know, professional activities, and I had always enjoyed that. I have always enjoyed being involved, networking and providing service through committee work, task force work, and so on. And so I just found that it was the right combination for me. And at the time, being in private practice yielded more money, more income than being a counseling center psychologist. I don't know if it's true anymore, but at the time it was true. So, you know, I think there are many pros and cons and many directions that counseling psychologists can work in. It's such a broad area, you know, being a consultant, you know, developing a variety of different niches is the opportunity. And, of course, these days we're talking about integrated healthcare, you know, working closely with healthcare professionals in our work. So I'm excited for, younger people. I'm close to retirement age. I don't know how many more years I'll work, but I think young people have more opportunity to develop different models of service delivery, and that's very exciting.
Finally, what advice do you have for early career professionals and graduate students?
Oh, gosh, okay. Well, I could go on and on about that, but I think I think one of the things that I'd advise people to do is to try to be as aware as possible of your strengths and try to follow both what your strengths and your interests are. All work has some drudgery, but it's important to mostly enjoy what you're doing. I think it's important to be clear about what your goals are. How much money is enough and where will that come from, and what kinds of activities do you value and do you enjoy, and how important is family. There's so many different factors that go into decision making about direction in career, for example. I think it's also important to be willing to take risks, because the development of confidence is a lifelong process, and it's only through taking risks and living through whatever happens that, helps develop or promote confidence. And so that's really important as well. I think it's important to learn from mistakes and not let your identity be affected by mistakes. We have to remember that everybody makes them, and I think sometimes people feel such shame when they make mistakes that they sort of disappear and go away and stop taking risks, for example. It's important to realize that you can learn from them and just kind of move on. I think it's really important to embrace the social justice and advocacy values inherent in counseling psychology. I think those have become more articulated in the past couple of decades in our profession, and I just really encourage young people to continue to embrace those in a variety of different ways, and to be willing to speak up in various contexts, both in the communities in which we live as well as in our professional world, about the importance of those values. So I would encourage that as well.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
Okay, you're very, very welcome.